Stefan Kohler.
Nice to meet you, Stefan.
Wait a minute, and you worked at Kohler, but those are
I don't know if there's a relation. Are you related to the Kohler family?
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Not
fine.
that I know of.
You know who Kohler is?
Oh, yeah. I used to live in Wisconsin.
Sure. Yeah, I heard that from the description Dave shared earlier. Yeah, certainly one of the largest private businesses in the country with the rich history. But yeah, I would expect anyone living in Wisconsin with the name would be related somehow.
So who are you, by the way? What's your name?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, Stefan, my name is Jeff Champagne. It's a pleasure to meet you, and look forward to and appreciate you having a conversation with David and I.
Yeah, and so I'm
Thanks
Dave.
for including me.
Yeah, and I'm Dave Pausner. But we'll put links on the. We're going to put our. We'll be short on introductions, but we'll put our. You're on LinkedIn, and you're on LinkedIn, and I'm on
Of course.
LinkedIn. We'll put
Always.
it in the show notes. So if we actually don't throw this recording away, which is a real possibility.
It's a possibility.
And we post it, then people, if we make an impression, good or bad, people will know where to look. So, okay.
You're in it now, Stefan. So appreciate you joining us. So this is our initial podcast of Innovation Blab, we're calling it. And I think it's going to be a fun and carefree kind of conversation around what it takes to innovate, what is innovation, and what are the steps? How do you do it? Who are the experts? Where did you learn it? All that good stuff. But
well, in point of fact, we'll cover what we actually cover. But that sounds like that's ambitious. But if we can pull that off,
not bad, right?
You know what I didn't tell you?
Yeah.
You can see me here. We didn't tell you what Stefan did. We did say he was not with Kohler, the plumbing
Company. Sure.
fame, but you're at the University of Michigan.
I'm with University of Michigan.
Excellent.
Innovation partnerships. I help commercialize technologies in the biomedical space.
Very cool. Okay.
Can you tell us about? Oh,
Yeah,
I was asking, tell us about the game. He watched the game
Oh, cool.
with Washington the other day. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it was huge, historical.
He was in a bar.
A big deal for the men up north, as my friends at the Ohio State University like to call them.
It must be pretty jealous these days.
I bet they are. I bet they are.
Did you go to OSU?
No. I have a friend who went to OSU, and I'll tell you a funny story. But I'm curious, what was your impression of the game once it was all said and done, Stefan?
Seems like Michigan controlled the game. They started out strong, and I felt like they maintained control. So it was very impressive.
Did the coach call you up during the game for advice?
Harbaugh is pretty impressive what he's done in Michigan.
Yeah. Now he was a former quarterback there, was he not?
He grew up in Ann Arbor.
I didn't know that.
So I understand.
I grew up in Ann Arbor. That doesn't. Okay, so wait a
Did
minute.
you really?
Yeah, I did. But
My understanding is he went to high school in Ann Arbor.
But you mean he was not a? I thought he was I thought he was a quarterback under Schembechler. Was he not? Am I wrong? Do you know, Jeff?
No, I'm not familiar with his history.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so you're.
I feel like I should know more since I work for the University of Michigan, but
you might lose your job after this.
I
Might not. I mean, actually, it might be because he's on this podcast. But so Jeff had asked you what. So actually, maybe I asked you. So what do you do? What does your office do at the University of Michigan? And does it have anything to do with innovation?
So we spearhead the innovation engine of the University of Michigan, which is a huge innovation engine. My office is Innovation Partnerships. We used to be known as Technology Transfer.
What's the difference?
So we help commercialize technologies. We have 3 groups in our office. I'm in the licensing group. My title is Director of Therapeutics Licensing.
Okay.
Also, I have a venture group that focuses on helping start startups.
Okay.
And the Corporate Research Alliances group that helps build alliances with industry and bring in sponsored research.
Can you hear him? I can. Oh, he does?
I can hear him. Yep.
Speak up, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like 30 miles from here, aren't you?
22.
Okay. So ways, you gotta speak up. Okay.
But
Okay.
so Stefan, let me ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind. So
Sure.
I've spent a lot of time working with tech transfer offices in academia for years, probably about 15 years now, and I love it. I think one of the measuring sticks that they all measure each other with is the number of invention disclosures you get each year from some of the faculty and staff and students and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about the volume of innovation that goes through that engine of yours?
So we are a high volume office, typically have over 500 invention disclosures, so it's,
A year.
That's quite a bit. That's up there with MIT, right? So I think they're somewhere around there.
up there with MIT and Stanford.
That's great.
Proportionally, to be fair though, proportionally, what's the number of faculty or I'm sorry, faculty and grad students? What's your purview? Faculty, grad students, and undergrad, or just faculty and grad students?
A number that's looked at is research expenditures. How many invention disclosures do you get per research
And what's
dollars spent?
okay? And what's the comparison between?
Michigan is about 1.7 billion.
No. Really?
Yeah,
And what's MIT?
I would have to look up MIT's number. I
Yes.
haven't-
It never held me back. Do you think it's about the same, or is it a fraction?
You're an MIT alum, so
We'll just assume it's a tenth of that. How's that? No, it's gonna be up there in the millions or hundreds of
Yeah, it's
millions.
up there.
Yeah, it's okay. All right.
oh, it's
So-
up there. I mean, MIT is.
One of
I
the,
don't have the number in front of.
So where were you
Yeah,
before?
no worries. So the question I guess is, if MIT is a gold standard of some sort in that tech transfer space, they would commercialize or start essentially, around a dozen and a half, 18 or so businesses out of those 500 invention disclosures a year, right? How do you measure against that stat? And is that an accurate measurement of how well a tech transfer program's doing?
He's under the gun here. He didn't realize. That you were
I'm
going to
sorry.
grill
I
him, make him
didn't-
feel
I didn't-
bad.
We didn't prep Stefan for any of these questions, but
There.
that's why we're blabbing.
Take a guess. It's a blab. We're blabbing. This is like a.
So we had a record number in our last fiscal year of 582 disclosures, which is
That's substantial.
our record, and it's a pretty high number.
How many of those will you? Hey, I know this podcast is supposedly about innovation. So how do you measure them on innovation? And I don't mean scientific innovation, because they could be non-scientific, or non-engineering innovation. It could be just a radically interesting idea for a business that's licensable. How do you measure that stuff? Not you, but how does the tech licensing office at U of M do that?
So the key numbers, a couple of key numbers we look at, it is invention disclosures and number of startups.
Number of startups that come out of you or that license your technology?
Per year. No, per year. What does that generate in terms of economic
The
development?
last
Right?
fiscal year, we had 25. Our record has been 32. So we are up there with MIT and Stanford and the like.
Yeah, you are. That's impressive.
Wait a minute. What do you? So I'm behind here. So I get the disclosures, the information of the. I get the notion of invention disclosures, which,
Yep.
from my perspective, there will be a university form, or at least a proposed format of a write-up that a grad student or a professor or anyone else who's covered by the policy will submit in hopes of having the university fund the obtaining of protection, probably patent protection, and maybe to fund more than that, and hopefully to help them hook up with a business. Is that fair for what it? So, but when you say startup, do you only count startups that come from professors or grad students? Or do you also count startups as, say Jeff and I once we realize this podcast is going to fail, decide we want to license, and it actually has failed, but we want to license technology we want to do a startup, we want to license your technology. Does that count as a startup? If we're us outsiders license your stuff?
If a startup licenses a technology from Michigan and the startup is based on this technology, it's not just you license 100 technologies and one of them happens to be from Michigan, then we probably wouldn't count you. But if it's like a core technology of your startup, we count you. So
what you're saying, Dave, is you don't count, but possibly if it was based on a Michigan.
Right. But if you and I started a business of a patent troll business, if you know what that is, right? Where you basically collect a bunch of patents in a space like Wi-Fi or whatever and sue people, that wouldn't count. But if we base it on your technology, it would. Okay.
Let's wait a second. What do you mean based on our technologies? We would not license to you if you just want to sue others. We would not license to you.
Definitely
not. What fun is that? Okay, that's interesting.
Predatory behavior will get you nowhere, David. But
I mean, if somebody is infringing our patents, we would look into suing ourselves. I mean, we would not need an intermediary to do that.
I was going to ask a question, but you ask first because I know what my next one is.
So if there's, I mean, that's impressive. I appreciate you sharing your record there. 32 out of 500, that seems to be the gold standard. And my question is that low? I mean, do we feel like we're getting the most out of those 500 invention disclosures if the gold standard is 32 companies out of that 500? Or would it make sense to aim?
Yeah, are you passing judgment on
No. I've been curious about this for years, for the last 10, 15 years since working with these large tech transfer offices, because there's such a diligence in getting that number up to, hey, we have over 500, but wouldn't it be better if we had maybe say, 200 and we got 50 companies out of it and we spent more resources on less disclosures?
I totally agree. I'll argue, Jeff, that goes to the question of how do you measure innovation and how are you passive? Are you guys passive, which is, hey, look at this? Or do you actively push? Yeah.
I guess my point is that there's a finite amount of resources that a university can invest in these activities, right? Whether it's staffing or funding or endowments and everything else, but not everybody's going to win the race, is my point, and not every invention disclosure is gold. And I also understand that it is a sensitive topic because it is attached to tenure and it's attached to PhDs and it's attached to the accolades of the university. But wouldn't it make sense to do more with less disclosures and get further for the dozen or so that you really want to get out there into the world and dedicate resources to a smaller bunch of them?
That is a great question. What's your answer, sir?
So the underlying assumption here is if we put more resources into starting startups, we would have more startups.
Yes.
What is that assumption based on? What kind of resources are you talking about? Like, people in our office? I mean,
For example,
our office is top staffed and top resourced. If we had more people in our office, we would not have more startups. We even now have an investment arm.
Hold on.
Invest in startups.
But isn't it a question of Jeff's question is a good one. Isn't it a question of Ouija boards? You know Ouija boards? You know what Ouija boards are?
I don't.
A Ouija board as a kid, when we were kids, there was a board and you'd put your hands on it and somebody would ask you a question and like a diviner's rod for water, it would find the answer.
David went to a preschool for the occult. So, we have to excuse him. His traditions as a child were different than ours, but David dabbles in some dark stuff apparently. But
but it's a good question, which is where Jeff was going is the numbers sound good, but couldn't they be better? And or the flip side of that is, how do you decide what ones to put resource into, right? Wouldn't that be the flip side of it?
Yeah,
How
I
do you
guess that's
decide
my
what to
point.
put resource into.
Is that you don't want to divide it evenly among the 500, but how do you pick winners, right? And how do you take and make sure the winners make it
The
further?
innovators, right?
Right.
We got him. He's broken.
No,
It depends on how do you define a winner?
Well, the winner, we don't know in the end that they're a winner, but we know that if they were a football analogy, I think the starting quarterback for today ought to be X. We won the game. That was a winner. A winner of the game, and my choice was a winner, my selection. So you guys, how do you decide who the winners are going to likely be?
yeah, and I'm not just talking about unicorns, right? We could say, hey, if they become a unicorn, they're a winner. Great, it's their $1 billion valuation, whatever. But I guess my point is, there's certain criteria that we look at when we talk about these startup companies, the invention disclosures, other ways, right? Does it solve an unmet need? Is it in a relevant area that we can dedicate resources to as a university? But I would spend a lot of time with a patent attorney going into the MIT tech transfer office, right? And we would spend time with the PIs, and we would kind of vet their ideas. We'd help them with a little market information or maybe a little bit about the patent landscape in that space. And we would help vet those for the tech transfer office. So they could say, do we want to spend resources on this or do we not?
No. Okay, I agree, you could do that, but the flip side is, someday we'll let him answer this question, right? But
Yeah.
he seems hesitant.
There's no easy answer to this.
Yes,
I
but
mean, it's very early stage technologies.
Sure.
What resources are we spending? Well, resources we're spending is we file a patent on this, so that's a resource we spend on technologies.
But your time, don't you? See, Jeff, I'm going to sort of respond to you at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, which is, sure, the patent side is great. And in some ways, the patent side is an insurance policy, which is, we picked a winner. Yes, we found the right strategic partner or the right startup to get them off the ground. Yes, they were in the right market. Oh boy, and by the way, we have patent coverage which helps smooth the way, or either to get where we are, or will smooth the way for the business going forward. So I'll argue, yes, you should bring the patent attorneys in early and often. All that stuff is good. But that having been said, you want to talk to investors and strategic partners, and that ought to be what you're doing to figure out where the markets are.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
How do you measure that?
I do that, and my colleagues in our venture team do that. We have extensive network with investors, entrepreneurs.
And is that mostly what
Ultimately, in order for something to succeed, you need a technology, you need capital, but you also need
a market,
management talent,
and a market.
Yep.
So is that what you do?
Yeah, you need management talent. So it's just a lot of factors come together.
Is that what you do? Is your job? I see him working here. He's visiting from Ann Arbor. He's got space here in Cambridge, or in Boston, wherever. But is your job your job of your colleagues to rifle through the 580 invention disclosures and start guessing at winners and start making phone calls and start figuring out market sizes and start seeing if you can bring this together, all these factors, management, funding, strategic partners? Is that your job?
Yeah, that's part of our job. We do that.
Yep. David, do me a favor. If you could just get comfortable, maybe take your shoes off and put your feet up. You look really uncomfortable there.
Oh, yes. Oh, by the way, do you like my socks?
Beautiful socks. Thank you for sharing.
This is about innovation, so I'm going to talk briefly about innovation in socks. We're losing you.
Are those smart wool socks?
Well, no, I was going to say they're darn tough. I do have some smart wools also.
I was going to say I exclusively wear smart wool socks. I think they're the best, especially for cold weather like this.
Smart wool is pretty good.
Oh, wait a minute. I will argue, and this is a non-technology innovation that needs to be discussed. Okay. These socks, this pair of socks, you can see the both of them.
Clearly.
This pair of socks is good for a lifetime. They will replace them if they wear out. Obviously, if my birds peck holes in them, they won't. But if they wear out by natural causes, I just send them back and I get new socks. That to me is innovative.
How is that how can they sustain that? Because every sock at some point wears out.
I
Yeah,
know,
especially my socks. My socks,
but you haven't
especially.
seen that? Jeff, you haven't seen that ad
I've
campaign?
I've heard of things like that. It sounds like, LL Bean has similar guarantees on their products, but they stopped doing that because people were overusing that benefit, right? So, but no,
REI, I have that too.
REI will actually,
They don't have that anymore
Oh,
because
really?
people were just, some people were abusing this.
but I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
How do you abuse this? Well, you can wear things out and then bring it back. But my understanding, some people just they have sales where they sell used items.
ooh,
So people cheaply bought old stuff and then they brought it back.
yeah, no, thank you, no, thank you. But
Can I go on my interlude a little longer?
yeah, go ahead. I'm
That
game.
innovation, is that innovation? Do we call this innovation, or the fact that so many have already done it means it's not innovative? Because to me,
No, I mean it might just be marketing. It's brand building. It's there's a bunch of things it is. I wouldn't say it's innovation. It's if it's not based on unless it's got if they're so happy with their technology and they're so determinant that it's going to withstand the test of time because of some new materials or something like that. That's different. That's different. It's like try to break our socks. We've got the strongest socks. But I mean, I wear through Smart Wools and then I buy more. I find they're more comfortable, and I find the blends they have don't make your feet sweaty, and they don't. There's technology built into these that I think other socks don't compete with.
I will try some of the lightweight ones, but Stefan and I were talking about this earlier.
Yep.
Going to you're touching on technology. You're mentioning technology, and by the way, I do think technology must play a piece of this. But Donald Trump, and I'm no fan.
Oh man.
Definitely no fan. I'll argue he's kind of innovative.
Ugh.
I'm sorry, but is it not? Is innovation always
Well, I'd say he's retrovative. He's bringing old things back that are distasteful and out of touch with the reality we live in, but they're effective in whatever he's doing. Yeah, I wouldn't call him innovative though.
Why do you say it's retrovative? I'm not even sure that's a word.
Because and I hate to even use it. I hate to use his name, but I'll tell you what I believe retrovate means. But I think, and I'm not going to use his name. I'm not a big fan by any means, but I think what he does is he's a student of history, and he learns what he does, and his behavior is not stupid. It's not by chance. It's historic because he watches what worked in history for other strong men and dictators and and their sycophants, and he's just replicating what they did. Nothing about what he's doing is new. He learned from Cohn, his mentors, and all his criminal associates, but nothing he's doing is new. It's all the same tricks.
Well, okay, well, maybe that's true, but I'll argue even bringing old things back can be innovation. So,
And that's what retrowation is. Retrowation is taking the old and then it's adding a new element of technology or something to it to make it a new innovation. And so that's one of the methods that I've helped companies to use over the years is let's go back through all the expired patents. Let's find all the stuff that I don't have to patent or protect and I can use that was done really well. And then I'm going to add a flavor of a new technology or a new enablement to make it new and fresh and patentable.
well, arguably that's sort of the standard for even technology innovation because most products are built with nuts and bolts have been around since Stefan's born at least, and that was a long
right.
time.
That's right. That's right. But you don't have to take that, Stefan. You can jab right back. But I would argue that retrowation is instead of grabbing for everything novel and new and non-obvious, it's taking and building a platform that is based in 20-year-old technology or later, right? So we did a lot of that when I was at NERAC, is show me what's expired, and we're going to use that as the building blocks for what's not.
I feel, and Stefan weigh in here, just elbow in with your words. I think the focus on intellectual property and technology is skews the definition of innovation, because I think you could argue that Facebook and all these things I hate, but are real money makers, and the investors certainly would find them to be innovative. I think they're innovative in their own ways. I mean, it's tempting from our businesses, all of our businesses, to focus on IP, but there's so much other innovation out there. What's that pizza place down that everyone talks about down in New Haven? Pepe's?
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
No, I'm not either, but
I do believe that innovation is driven by technology, Dave.
Yeah.
There are innovations in business models.
Yeah.
Regularly, there are new business models, but technology is a consistent driver of
but it also brings
innovation, and not all technology is being patented. I mean, a lot of software is just not.
And not all
patented. Facebook, but Facebook, you mentioned Facebook, yeah, to a large degree is like driven by technology.
Sure.
The technology company.
I know, but is the innovation, I mean, again, all of our businesses count on intellectual property, and we're all big fans of it. But innovation, there's got to be more than innovation in business models. I guess the question is, what is innovation? Is it just, I thought these socks were innovative, and you guys are saying they're really not, or Jeff's saying they're really old school.
And they're branded.
Lifetime warranty is an old thing, David. I mean, I don't see the innovation in there either.
And to quote,
unless it's a new technology that makes this sock maker so confident that their socks never wear out.
So where does innovation play in the university or a typical tech licensing office, whether it's University of Michigan or otherwise? Is there any measure of innovation? Is there a checklist that you guys go through? Yes, there's a market. Yes, the market's bigger than X. Yes, the management team is good. And is there a checkbox that says, and this is innovative, or no? Is that not really ever, is that word even come up in your offices ever?
I mean, we call disclosures invention disclosures. So we do look for something that is inventive.
Yeah, and those words probably are related. You think?
So something that's novel and non-obvious to use patenting language.
Are you just moving your mouth, or did you turn your mic off?
I did. I'm sorry. So I wanted to mention real quick that last year I got acquainted with the MedTech Innovators Group, one of the largest accelerators / incubators in the world. And they're set up virtually, and they bring in judges from all over to kind of judge. And one of the things they ask us is, as we're looking at these companies and vetting them, is, rate the opportunity on a scale of 1 to 10. It's not, there's no objective criteria. It's just asking us to tell, is this a product of innovation, and then rate the innovation of the product. Is it a me too? Is it incremental, or is it transformational? And I think when we talk about innovation classically, or in terms of technology, we're looking for those transformational bits that can take something that's old and make it new, or those transformational things that aren't necessarily just a step change, but a different way of looking at a problem and solving it. So, that's my definition of innovation, is coming at it from a different angle, some, definite enablement with new technology, or something that you say, wow, that's new, that's different. I can't believe I didn't think of that, but that's going to solve a lot of problems. And, it's also something that's transformational to our human experience, whether it's something that's going to solve a big problem for us that we're all facing together, like climate change, or the amount of horse poop in the streets in New York, right? With the advent of cars, we were only able to overcome it. They originally thought in the early 1900s, they said, well, if we keep growing our population like this, there's going to be poop in the streets so high from the horses around, we're not going to be able to walk, right? But eventually some innovation comes and saves them from that collective doom. I think we depend.
I heard that the dinosaurs would often talk about that if they stayed around as long as they seem to be staying around, the whole planet would be full of dinosaurs. So I thought I'd just throw that in there. You remember that comment?
Where did you hear that? But I just saw the Flintstones. We watched the 1994 adaptation of the Flintstones the other day with John Goodman. Shout out to John Goodman. It's a Emmy Award winning, deserving award, but he never got recognition for that movie.
By the way, but keep going with Goodman.
So I think it's we depend on innovation. We look for innovation. We think it's going to save us, but it's that transformational characteristic that we're looking for. Go ahead, David.
Question for him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was Seinfeld innovative? You know Seinfeld?
Of course.
Yeah. Was that innovative?
It's a sitcom. They've been around, so I don't think that format was innovative.
Well, you tell me. I think I can reveal this detail about you. You tell me it's probably one of the few shows you watch. And it sounds like you watch it a lot. So how could you dismiss it as a sitcom and yet somehow, like, were the Beatles innovative?
I think the innovative thing about Seinfeld was it was a show about nothing, right? It didn't need to have a theme or otherwise, but they were trying to just make everyday life, into a sitcom, and in that I think it was different. But does that make it innovative? I don't know.
I think it was. What do you think, Stefan? Your job is to gauge and judge innovation and put the resources of a major university. Would you guys have invested if Seinfeld approached you now as a professor and said, "I've got an idea"? Would you guys take that up?
Did you just rewrite Stefan's job description?
So if somebody comes and says, "Well, I got an idea. I want to do a TV show about nothing."
Yeah.
Sorry, it's been done.
I would say, yeah, that's been done by Jerry Seinfeld.
But flashback to 1984 or whenever that was, 1990. Would you guys? That to me sounds innovative. A show about nothing sounds innovative. And I guess I keep coming back to the same point that I have 2 points here, which is innovation is not purely technology. And just because there's technology involved, it's not necessarily innovative. And another point I have is we don't really know innovation until we look back. Facebook, I think, turned out to be innovative. I hate it, but inside.
I mean, again, Facebook is a technology company, David. I mean, that is innovation driven by technologies, and the internet allowed a new business model. The business model is connect billions of people and advertise.
But Seinfeld is innovative.
Seinfeld,
and there's no technology.
A show about nothing. I mean, sitcoms had been around before Seinfeld, right?
I know, but his was about nothing.
And it was humor. Yeah, I mean, show about nothing. I don't know. I feel like since Seinfeld was such a big hit, you're using, it was very successful, so it must have been innovative. I think that is something you're using here now. You're using some sort of hindsight.
Yeah. In your job, your job, all of our jobs are to try to predict what in the end will have been determined to have been innovative.
I'm not in the job of, well, this is a new show. Is that going to be a hit? I mean, I'm not in that business.
Well, but that's
so
it's by analogy.
I'm in the biomedical field. We do IP is in a big important thing in that, as well as is there a market?
Weigh in here, Jeff.
But again, I'm not somebody who's with NBC or the like is like, is this going to be a successful show?
But it's by analogy. This is just I'm trying to push the boundaries of innovation.
I would say that innovation is like hardcore pornography, in that I think it was Justice Potter Stewart who said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And that's kind of what innovation is, right? It's not this predetermined objective criteria that says this is innovation. But when you see it, you're like, oh, that's pretty innovative. I think that's different. And no, I haven't seen anything like that before.
Would you then say Seinfeld when you seem to be a font of all knowledge, when did Seinfeld come out? Or maybe that's something Stefan knows.
Oh, if I had to guess, I'd say 92, but I don't know exactly when.
Sound right?
I don't know, actually.
Okay, but
Before I came to the US, so I don't even know, I don't have enough data to say whether it's truly innovative.
okay, well, I will argue that, oh, so I was gonna ask you a question based on that definition, because I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
Jeff, would Seinfeld count as innovative under that standard?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a classic case for that, I think, because it was a disruptor, right? It just the fact that it threw sitcoms into a whole new category and made, everyday nonsense funny. But his perspective, I think, made it innovative. It was 1989, by the way. So 1989 seems like yesterday, but not really. But it was at the time, it was pretty innovative, and I think.
How about, speaking of yesterday, were the Beatles innovative?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, what
but-
made
but
them
they-
innovative?
But
What
they were
made-
innovative again in a retrovative kind of way. They borrowed and used, rhythm and blues and some of the older styles to bring rock and roll to its kind of the audience, right? That they didn't have access to before that. And whether it was their, following of popular culture and different pharmaceuticals and things they used along the way in the path, but they brought something different to the scene, I think, than anybody in America had ventured into before.
I think what they brought to the scene was you're right. They added on to what existed, but I think they brought more harmony to the scene and more complex harmonies. And once they caught on, they were able to drag it further, whether it was through pharmaceuticals or otherwise. But I think they grabbed people, because if you listen to those early albums, they really sound so 1959-ish.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But there was a little more music in them than they're a little more sort of earwigs. What do you call the thing? Earwigs or earworms or whatever they're called?
Earwigs.
Yeah, they would catch your ear and it's like, hey, this is something we haven't heard. And then they dragged us along for what turned out to be a great ride.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the Beatles reference. I think that the Live at the BBC stuff is just as fun to listen to as Sgt. Pepper and other stuff. But these were 12-hour sessions recording on methamphetamines for hours to stay conscious in a club while they played in German. Also a Hamburg reference there. But I don't think the Beatles would have been the Beatles.
Did you ever see the Beatles in German?
It was before my time, David, not the young. But, I've been to Hamburg. I grew up in that area, and I've been to a bar where supposedly
really?
the Beatles were playing before my time.
Yeah.
So before we get off the Beatles, because I've been thinking about them lately, I don't know why. Maybe that was that new release that came out a few months ago. But I started. Oh, I know. I have something. You know what Qobuz is? You know what Qobuz? It's like Apple Music, but it's a different company. It's
Okay.
Qobuz. It's just they have better. I think they have better fidelity on their.
These are our new sponsors.
I'm hoping to get them as one, but if they have any sense, they've already shut down that idea. But I was listening to a bunch of one of their Beatles collections, and not only were I think they innovative at the time, sort of in the 64, 65, but I think they continue to innovate. And when you listen to, because it's funny, I watch my kids' reactions when old music is what I call old music, sort of 60s and 70s and 80s music is playing.
Sure.
You begin to realize that the Beatles changed so much from year to year or from album to album. And then you'll listen to something like, remember Electric Light Orchestra, or maybe that's a bad example. There's a lot of groups that sound very much the same. They had a sound, and while the sound might have been innovative the year it came out, often it wasn't. It didn't really seem to change.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. I mean, I think the Beatles innovated with the pharmaceutical of choice that they were introduced to that day, whether it was smoking pot with Bob Dylan or getting slipped LSD by their dentist. I mean, they were changing and adapting and evolving as a group together through their common experiences, and then also directing but participating in pop culture of the time as a result. And when you talk about innovation in the Beatles, you also have to mention that they just came out in 2023 with a new single. Have you heard their new song?
That was my reference of a few months ago. Yes, of course.
Yeah. So
They came out.
Well, Go ahead,
so
Jeff.
yeah, so back in the day, when or the three remaining Beatles were alive before George passed, they had found some recordings. Yoko had sent George and Ringo and Paul some recordings of John just messing around with their kids. They were very isolated at the time, and so he would kind of create these tunes, and he would record them. And they had a couple lines of John, but it didn't really go anywhere. And the Beatles came out in the earlier 2000s and released their anthology, and they had a couple new songs, Real Love and Free as a Bird. And those were also recordings of John's voices that they had gotten together, collaborated on. Anyway, this was one that they never quite finished, but they knew they wanted to address it. And recently they got back together, Ringo and Paul, and said, hey, we should finish that project. So they revived it. They used some of George's guitar. They used John's voice and Paul's kind of style of orchestrating, and Ringo on the drums, and produced the final Beatles song. And
it's worth listening to. And they were able to grab a few lines of. They had John's. They used who was the motion picture, the Avatar guy? Who's the Avatar guy?
Oh, Cameron? No.
Was it Cameron? They used one of those guys' AI technology to help separate out John's voice from street noise or whatever it was.
Sure.
That recording.
Yeah, it sounds good. The recording is good. I'm not a big fan of the long. I mean, it's a long song and it repeats one phrase over and over and over again. So I would have preferred it with something short, like a ditty like Her Majesty, where it's a short song where we can say goodbye to John but it doesn't need to be a huge production, right? It's one line. It doesn't need to be over and over and over again. So I would have liked that to be a minute or so, but I do think it's amazing that what they can do with artists these days. And I think the innovation in that space now is that you can also fill in the gaps. You can make a brand new song and make it sound like John, and it has nothing to do with John or anything he's ever recorded.
Are you now regretting that you participated in this?
No, I'm learning something.
Well, tell us what the University of Michigan. I see. Okay, so what we're dragging, but going back to innovation. I think what we're getting to is that innovation exists in a bunch of places. At least
I would agree with that.
in a bunch of areas. It's not
I
always.
agree with that.
It's not always technology, though that can help. I'll argue that what Jeff calls retrovation is really just a label that you can pull. Everything is retrovative to the extent that it rewraps something old. Often it adds something new, and most things do add something new, whether it's a marketing touch or a Donald Trump touch, whatever that is. But innovation is much more than just what the three of us do for our livings. And I think that since this is sort of a business-oriented podcast, we all base our businesses on either trying to help people protect or develop or capitalize on our best bet at something that years from now will turn out to be innovative, that will actually succeed. How's that?
That's a good way of wrapping things up.
Did we run out of time already?
No, not at all. It's 1:50. I think we've got another 10 minutes, but I'm going to throw another kind of grenade into the conversation of innovators. So individuals that we look to as a society that says, this person is an innovator and we should look for their next idea, or they've got some kind of formula for success that we should all look up to. So I think you know whose name I'm going to mention now. But
not Elon.
Yeah, of course. And one of the things that I was reading recently and kind of thinking about as well, an extended frame is these individuals somehow get this exceptional, they're an exceptional exception to society in that once we determine that they are not necessarily good or bad, but mostly good, that we give them a pass on all the terrible things that they do.
Well, hold on. That's Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was this. Certainly
whole bunch of people. I mean, Steve Welch from GE, or any of these captains of industry that are helping us move innovation along and helping us innovate. Look at Rickover, for God's sakes, and the nuclear industry, or the nuclear triad. He helped our entire country to become a world superpower with the invention of the nuclear submarine. But he was a a son of a bitch if you had to deal with him as an individual. But
Well,
his way of innovating,
those are always different. Those are always different questions.
Right.
And I'll argue the Beatles, going back to the Beatles, I'll argue that once they establish themselves as a premier group, and it's not just the Beatles, it's almost anybody. What's her face? Taylor Swift. Once they establish themselves as innovative, then we cut them slack on all the things they do that aren't that interesting.
that's right.
So
Well,
let
not
me-
just not that interesting, but could be detrimental to us as well.
Right, let me go back to the University of Michigan because Stefan is wandering on us. Can you admit?
Just listening and learning.
Can you either admit or let on? Let's make this about technology licensing offices. We're not talking about University of Michigan. Okay, we're definitely not talking about that. So you will not get fired, at least for answering this question. Let's talk about technology licensing offices in general. Do they sometimes see the Stephen Jobs or Elon Musk of their within their jurisdiction of their university and say, oh, here comes so-and-so again. This is going to be awful. Or these are always losers, though they look attractive initially. Or this person always produces winners or often. So let's go with it. Do you guys?
Can do no wrong.
Yeah.
So I work with innovators, Michigan faculty typically. I look at their technologies. And I also look at them. Some are just good coming up with new stuff for which there is a market. Some faculty, even though they're academics, have a very good sense of markets and commercial
Oh, so you will factor that in.
Others don't. So
Yes.
innovators in an academic setting come in a broad range.
Okay. So
Some are just, some faculty are just, to some degree, it's just they run a business.
Yep.
Manage people, they bring in money, they churn out publications, and they produce innovation. And some innovation can be commercialized, and some faculty are just good. And we have a lot of faculty co-founders.
are there innovators who are, and the answer must be yes, are there innovators who are great at the basic sciences, who run labs and bring in money for those labs, but they can't, chew gum and walk at the same time when it comes to commercialization? And therefore, they may be great innovators and they may run labs that bring in millions of dollars or hundreds of millions, or whatever they want to bring in. But you guys, when you look at their stuff, it's like, oh, so-and-so's back. Jeff is back again, not him. Is that ever the case?
So some faculty, they're not interested in commercialization. They view themselves in the business of creating new knowledge. They innovate, but they're not interested in the commercial aspects of innovation. They're basic science. They want to advance basic science. So, and that's okay. The University of Michigan is about research and about education. And in addition, there are technologies that can be commercialized, and that helps solve problems. But it's not like we're not a company that is in the business of commercializing innovation.
Go ahead, Jeff. I know my next question, so go ahead.
I love David's questions because he asked the question in a way that it's yes or no, but the question is a couple paragraphs. But here's the I guess the other thing I'm curious about is if people create innovation that is so helpful and so transformational that it's going to affect society in a way that is too big, that the government sometimes steps in and says, "Oh no, we're going to keep that for us. That's ours." You ever run up against something, Stefan, that's so transformational that it makes the blacklist and it just can't see the light of day because of its implications?
Your answer to this might be one of those where we always joke and say, I could answer that, but I'd have to kill you after I did it.
That's right. It's sometimes
I've been in this position for 7 years, and I've not come across something else like that.
Interesting.
blacklist.
So
That's
the
fair.
question I was dying to ask, and I'll try to make it less than 3 paragraphs, is this: how much money does your department bring into the university in comparison to the amount of grant money that comes in through federal government and other quasi-grant and other grant offering organizations? You follow the question? It goes
So
to,
you're looking at, well, how much money does the University of Michigan bring in grants, and
well, I'm trying to figure out what's
how
more
much
important.
do we bring in?
How much is
I feel like it's not the right way to view this. We provide a service to faculty. That's our focus. It's not like the NIH is giving money to the University of Michigan, and it's to advance basic science.
No, that's my point, which is,
So it's not like, okay, what is the return on investment? So
but no, like where I'm going is in tax off an answer of yours, which is, I think you guys are a service organization, and I suspect in the end, you bring in a fraction of what is fundamentally a research institution, isn't it?
yeah, we are a public research institution, yes.
So the fact that you guys, if your department makes $1 more than your salaries in your expenses, it's a win of some sort.
Yeah, it is, and we bring in significant money to the university to further fuel research. And also, our innovators get a share of what is generated.
Thoughts, Jeff?
No, I think that's a good way of looking at it, right? As a resource for the faculty, right? All of these inventors and professors and teachers and tenured, staff are they benefit from that service as a resource from the school, and they might not be experts at it. So having individuals that can help walk them through that process and acquaint them with the ins and outs of commercializing a technology, I think is really important. And I think we need to do more of that.
I mean, Michigan owns the IP.
Of course.
I want to stress, as we are closing our discussion, I want us to keep in mind that innovation also is solving problems.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I think that's
we at Michigan focus on helping our technologies make an impact. So I would like us to close with that thought.
He wants us to clip that out and send it to his boss, or rather his boss.
That's perfect.
His boss's boss.
I think you nailed it, Stefan. We appreciate you being here with us. But yeah, innovation at the end of the day has to solve an unmet need. It has to solve a problem, number one. And I think the big word for this year that I've heard so many times, it's right here in front of me as well, impact, right? We have to have an impact on society. Otherwise, why are we doing this? Why are we spending time and resources doing this? So solve a need and have an impact. Thank you for summarizing that.
My final word is, I think you guys are being far too narrow on that. I don't think it needs to be an unmet need. I think it just needs to be something different that the market takes up for whatever reason. But
Touche.
okay,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. Nice to meet you. Safe travels.